So as I said, for today's session, we will be working with deadlift. We're going to be working how to go from a forearm plank into what's called a dolphin pose. We're going to be working through the chest press in several different ways. We're going to be working with a kettlebell or hand weight, working in what's called a figure 8. Another thing for the core, we're going to be doing flat back leg lifts and upright rows. So that's in store. What will you need? You will want at least a couple of hand weights. That could be of any particular size that you would like. If you have a strap, we can use that for chest press. Other than that, if you got a kettlebell, we have some ways to use that. But you will at certain times want to have 2 weights for the day. Okay, let's go ahead and get ourselves started. If you'll come up into a standing position and have your feet about hip distance wide and begin to swing the arms so that your body begins to loosen up a little bit. So make that nice swing, that loosening of the structure. And of course, as you warm up, you can swing more, and it will alert us to any issues that the body is going through right now so that we don't provoke ourselves more. Things that get better with a warm up are things that will probably be okay in class. Things that get a little worse with the warm up, those are the things that we really want to make sure are not getting troubled. Let's have the arms go up and down. Remember, do the actions of warm up as long as you think you need that warm up. So if I stop before you're ready, you just keep doing it. Nice up and down action. Get those shoulders more awake, things moving, circulation changing. And then let the knees soften, rock your weight back, lose your balance so that you do it now. And the first time you lose your balance when you're working with the weights, you will not feel as encumbered. So a little bit of loss of balance, and then put 1 foot forward because we're often in awkward positions when we're weight training. So let's stand. Let's take a deep breath. And as we exhale, let's push the palms firmly together and then bring the arms up and inhale, draw them apart. And we'll do that again. We'll get the chest active, firm pressure. And then we'll go across from one side, across to the other side. And inhale. And we'll do that again. Now we're going to go the other way. Nice firm pressure. And again. Now lift up the shoulders and pull them backwards. Squeeze shoulder blades together, reaching back. Exhale. And then those shoulders go forward. We widen apart the shoulder blades. Deep inhale. So it's a reach and a squeeze backward. Exhaling. Shoulders forward. Inhale. And one more time. That reaching, that squeezing back. And then we let that release apart. Take the feet so they're about shoulder distance wide and push the feet and knees away from each other so you activate your outer hips. Pull in the core. With the chest staying up and the shoulders going down, push your hand into one side and tilt. Keep the legs active. Keep the ribs and the arm lifting on the other side. Take a deep breath in. Exhale and lift yourself up and out of that. And then again, activate the legs. Pull in the core, chest up, shoulders down. Push into the leg and tilt. Lift the ribs, lift the arms, stretch up. Inhale. And then exhale, lift yourself up and out. Now let's make a wide stance. Loosen your things up. Light stretches. Hands to knees, reach across. Gently stretch. Breathe deep. The other side. Gently stretch. We'll do the first side again, and we'll inhale and open the ribs. Exhale. And then we'll reach across and inhale and open the ribs. Exhale. And we'll bring our elbows to the knees, and we will tilt a shoulder toward the middle and come back up. And the other side. That's a little different stretch. And come back up. And we will shift our weight to one side, and you can go lower or come up higher to stretch that inner thigh. And then we'll shift the other way. And then do that first side again. And to the second side once more. And then right in the center of it, just lift the hips a little higher so the hamstrings, back of the leg are stretching. Let the head and the arms hang, breathing deeply. Decompress that spine. And then bending at the knees, hands to the knees, lift yourself up and bring the feet now about shoulder distance wide. We want to do some preparatory squats, some warm-up squats. So the weight is on our heels. Our knees are going to bend, the arms are going to go forward. We're going to come down, knees and feet point the same direction, press and come back up. You don't have to go very deep. Just warming up. If your knees are uncomfortable, make note of that. Don't go any deeper. With the arms crossed, we will have a little more effort to keep the weight back on the heels. Don't take it to the toes. You may find that you naturally don't want to go as deep when the arms aren't helping you. And if we create an extension of the back just by lifting the arms up, we will find that this alignment makes things just a little bit more deliberate. And again. And that's great. Okay, we're warmed up. And so today we're going to be going through deadlift, our first action. Although it starts with the idea of a good morning, let's just review what happens in a good morning. And you might just do the good morning if the deadlift proves to be a little troublesome. I'm taking my feet a little wider than that distance. So really my feet are shoulder distance or a little bit wider. And in a good morning, I'm just going to cross my arms for it. In a good morning, we push the hips back, and that allows us to bend at the hips. And the hips go behind the line of the knee, and we tilt forward. And in a good morning, the heels press out, and we push our hips underneath us. And so this action of good morning might be where you're more comfortable. But ultimately, we're going to turn this into a deadlift. So you can keep doing the good mornings, but here's what a deadlift would be. I'm not going to use the weights at first. I'm just going to have my hands in front of me. I'm going to tilt my hips back, and my arms are going to come down. I don't have to go to the floor. I'm going to push my heels out, bend my knees, and look forward. The chin has to lift. I'm going to press my heels and come back up again. So good morning, the legs stay straight. In the deadlift, the knees bend. Now, if I'm going to use weights in the deadlift, I want a couple of them, and I'm just going to hold them right here in front of my body. I'm not going to use a bar. I'm just going to tilt forward, pushing the hips backward. Low back stays curved. I'm going to bend my knees, and I'm going to lift my chin looking forward. Now, as I press into my heels, I come up, and the weights end up right here. And you can see my pelvis is pushing forward, much like what happens in a good morning. I could just do this without the bend of the knees. Push the heels outward and come up like a good morning. Or I come forward for the deadlift, I bend the knees, I lift the chin. So important. Got to get the head in the right position. A lot of people forget that. So don't look down if you're going to do the deadlift. Forward, bend, lift the chin, and come back up again. It's a sequence. It's almost like a dance step kind of thing that we've got to do to get the action. So here is from the front posture, tilting forward. As I would do just the good morning, I push the heels outward and I come straight back up. Here's the deadlift. I come down, I bend the knees, I lift the chin, I press the heels, I come back up. So there's a nice sequence of behaviors. We're trying for about 10 of these. You might do a little more, you might do a little less, but we're just trying to get something that works the body in a comfortable way to give us a fatigue that's reasonable. And knowing that technique is going to take a little while for us to learn. So not to worry if at first you're not sure about the technique. Okay, great. Now we're going to come either onto a wall or onto the floor. I'll show you the wall version first. We'll start in a forearm position, pulling upward, and then we'll step our feet a little backward. That's because our next position would be to move the hips back and then come forward. So the arms are against the wall and we're going back and forth. Now that is a wall version of going from a forearm plank into what's called in yoga the dolphin pose. And it looks like this. We come down, we rest so that the elbows are right underneath the shoulders, not forward, not behind them. And we come up, toes touching, into an actual forearm plank. And then we push ourselves backward. And then we come down and rest all the way back down again. Now you could do this from a knees down position. You could just come up into a kneeling forearm plank, and then you could push back into more of a downward puppy kind of position, and then come back and down. So that would be easier on shoulders, easier on the body. So let me show you that one again. I'm just going to lift myself up onto my knees. My back is level. I'm going to push myself backward. I'm going to come to level. I'm going to bring myself down. If I want to do it the way that is a full forearm plank, I come up into the forearm plank and I push myself back, and then I come forward and I bring myself down. Okay. Now, you might need to experiment a little bit with that, change a little as to what's going on. You might have to move the legs a little closer together. And, there's a lot of different ways that you could work with that. If you're finding this particularly difficult, you could start out in more of a forearm tabletop and then just get yourself to move more into that downward dog position, just getting yourself used to the action. That's also very good. Or you just push yourself backward if you find your shoulders are very tight. Same thing at the wall. You have the arms up high. We're basically just trying to move the hips backward, which would let the arms swing a little higher up there. So part of this is going to get used to what's happening in the shoulders. This action will eventually interpret into other things, but right now, this is a good one. So it's prepping the shoulders. It's a comfortable position. And I'll share with you some other things you can do if you find this to be a little too burdensome for you. But remember, anything new that we're starting with, the body's not going to initially know how to work with. We want to keep the arms shoulder distance wide. That would be a problem if the elbows got too wide. We want the elbows to stay lined up with the shoulders. And so watch out for that, especially as you continue with multiple actions. Your arms might drift. Okay, so that was the forearm plank to dolphin. And now we're going to work with the chest muscles, a chest press. Now, the chest press is an idea that we're going to be going from bent to straight. It is a lot like a push-up. If I were going to stay in a wall version of this, I would start with the hands a little wider than the shoulders. I would come toward the wall. I would push the hands toward the midline, and I would just be working back and forth in this region, maybe going all the way to a straight arm position, much like a wall push-up. If I'm going to work with the weights, I'm going to have to be on the floor. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm going to start with the arms aligned on the floor, out away from my body, about 45 degrees. I've deliberately got my knees bent so my back is not troubled. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the arms up and bring them toward the middle of the body, and then bring them out away from each other, and the elbows are going to come down at a 45-degree angle. Now, I am holding much like I would hold a hammer position. So my fists are pointing upward. I come up. It's like I'm making a hug position, and then coming out and down. Now, if you have a strap, this is another way we can do things from a seated or standing position. It would be the chest press too. We would take the strap, flat strap works rather nice. I bring it, but I've got to bring it relatively low across the lower part of my shoulder blades to get the right angle for this. I cinch it up comfortably tight, and I'm taking a wide angle, so I'm going outward and then across to the front, sort of meeting my hands together and then coming backward. So I'm starting with my arms rather narrow in back of me and broadening across, and then coming back. These are all excellent works to do. You could even do this at a wall region, your elbows bent, and then just pushing backward like that, hand staying at the wall region. So that as I said, my preference is varied on this one. I like all of the versions of this: the strap, the wall, the hand weights on the floor. It's great. It activates the pectoral muscles, not in an extremely strenuous way, much like, a push-up can be great, but it's a very plain angle. This one's more of a rounding kind of angle. It gets a little bit more movement through the shoulder blades, widening apart, and thus getting us underneath the shoulder blade to where that serratus anterior muscle lives. So it's nice to work with that to fully develop the structure of the shoulder. So remember, we're working on about 10 or so of these repetitions. Now, the next thing we're going to do, you might use a hand weight or you might use a kettlebell. In this round one, I'm going to show you how to do it with a hand weight. Now, we're going to be standing And our legs are going to be starting off at least shoulder, if not wider than shoulder distance wide. And I've got the weight in one hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a squat. I'm going to pass the weight underneath my body, grabbing it with the other hand. I got to make sure I got hold of it. I'm going to come up. I'm just holding near the end of the weight. So I'm going to pass it underneath, grab the weight, make sure I got it, and then come up. And so I'm making a figure eight around my body with the weight. I'm deliberately going slow. Like most kettlebell exercises, this is tricking us into doing a squat. I am keeping my chest lifted up. So when I squat down, I'm not just collapsing and bending downward. Nope. I'm keeping the chest lifted up. So there we go. That's nice with a hand weight. If you do happen to have a kettlebell, then you hold the kettlebell. And with the kettlebell, you got to make sure that you grabbed it with the other hand. Don't get sloppy, or else that weight's going to go flying across the room into important furniture and things like that. So with the kettlebell, it's the same figure eight action. This one is intended to not be extraordinarily so. Just make sure that you have taken the weight in the other hand before you let go, so you don't want to sling it around the room. And your legs are going to say, oh, wait a minute, this made me work, which is great. One of these high intensity interval kind of portions of our claps. And that is good. So lots of different work. Now, when you're done with that, you get your arm doing it. We'll talk about reversing and everything else in a couple of different rounds. So now we're going to work our core. Now this is really important. To do a flat back leg lift, we do need to keep the back absolutely flat, almost as if we're pushing a penny into the floor. If I were going to stand up, I would align myself where my shoulders and hips were on the wall, and I would deliberately flatten the back. And what I would do is I would shift the weight and then lift a leg forward with the back flat, okay? So you can do a flat back leg lift standing against a wall, all right? But classically, it's done against the floor. Now, here's the version where I start off making sure that my back is fully supported. So I'm going to flatten my back. I'm going to bring a knee into the chest and pull so that it helps support the back. This other leg is going to stick upward, okay? Now my back is flat, and I'm going to take this leg slowly down, but I'm not going to necessarily let it go too far. As soon as my back begins to feel that it would want to lift up, I'll pull the leg back in again. I'll switch sides, and I'll come down. Now maybe, we just go a little bit before our back tries to lift, or maybe we get the leg all the way down. By holding one side, we protect our back, because we've got to pull in the belly and keep the back flat. Now, what flattens the back is the centerline muscle, rectus abdominis. What pulls in the belly is the deep transverse abdominis. And I'll tell you this, at first, you'll be more able to flatten your back than you will be able to maintain the pulling in of your belly. But this should work. It's just you have to be in control of how far you lower the leg, and don't let your back lift up off the floor. Now, the idea is each leg would do this 10 times. If you say, get 5 or 6, you're probably okay with this. Maybe you can't get more yet. And maybe you just need to rest in between. But another thing to do is to do a little bit of knee rocking afterwards, to rock the knees side to side. Because our back might not have been expecting to have to remain flat like this. Our abdominal muscles might not have been able to hold it flat and protect it from the force of the leg. Legs are heavy. They're about a quarter of our body weight. So you can rock the knees back and forth a few times when you're finished with this, or just pull the knees in nice and firm so that your back relaxes gently afterwards. So an immediate sort of soothing effect for the back so that it doesn't get overwhelmed. And then the last thing in our rounds, we've got 6 things in each round, is an upright row, which is really great for the anterior, the front deltoid muscle. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. I'm going to use a couple of weights, and I'm going to create the action with the ends of the weights touching against each other. And that puts me with my hands, my arms at about shoulder distance wide. So here we are, touching like so. And as I start to raise these up, I'm getting the elbows above the wrists at all times. I'm making sure that I try and do this evenly. Now my arms don't like to do this evenly, so I always have to take a look in the camera just to make sure that everybody's obeying the rules, okay? And if it continues like that, then I do one at a time. I just come up appropriately for that side. And then I come up for the other side. Now, for some people, the elbows will be easily lifted higher than the wrists. For others, the arms will just more come into a flat position, and that's fine. But there should not be a point where your wrists are higher than your elbows. That is not the work we're trying to do. So level, if all you could bring it up to is here, it's below the level of your chin, that's fine. Even just a little ways, that's a good start. But if you had trouble, I would resort to just one arm at a time. Just try to create this action so you can identify the activity. It's an internal rotation as well as a work for those anterior deltoids. So good, it's a really good one. Really great for solving a lot of shoulder issues. And it's a nice lighter way to end the round so that we're ready now to do more. And we are starting with the deadlift or the good morning, so whichever you choose. The biggest difference is whether I bend the knees. I could use weights in both situations. So I'm going to hold the weights. Let's just say I wanted to do a good morning. I just sort of cross my arms and hold the weights. I take my feet out really wide. I push my hips backward. I tilt forward. I never round my back. I push the heels away from each other and come forward. Now I'm going in with an absolutely straight leg. I've seen people do it with the knees in a bend. And you know, that's okay if your knees bend slightly. Just make sure though that when you're coming up, you're pushing your heels out away from each other. Now for the deadlift, I'm going to be holding this and my arms are just there. They're holding, they're not going to be doing any lifting. They're just going to be holding the weight. So when I tilt forward, my low back's in position. I start at the point of the hamstring stretch. I bend the knees. I lift my chin. I push the heels down. I come upward. Okay. So really important to do that in all the pieces of the deadlift. So the part one is the tilt forward. The part two is the bend of the knees. The part three is the look forward. The fourth part is the coming upward. If you don't have 4 parts to your deadlift, you're straining your back because you're not putting the head in the position, because the part you'll leave out is almost always going to be to lift the chin. So bend the knees, lift the chin, and then press those heels. Oh my goodness. Heel pressure tells your body you want to work your seat muscle. All right. Toe pressure would be working your quads, and we don't need help working our quads in this action. So could just be that you're doing a good morning. Arms could be right here, heels pushing outward, keeping those legs straight because your knees don't want to bend today. Remember, it's the pelvis line behind the heels and the pelvis line moving toward the toes. All right, not back work. This is not your back work. Neither is the deadlift a back work. Heels are behind, hips behind the heel line, bend the knees, lift the chin, and then push forward, hips trying to come toward the line of the toe. So there's a little bit of that pelvic forward in both of these, which is why one can substitute for another, whichever you prefer. Good. Okay. Now, the first round, I showed you plank dolphin, but I know that sometimes that's too much for shoulders. So, you know, I said that the plank dolphin, and I'll show it to you, then I'll show you something else you can do. The plank dolphin, either done elbows right into the shoulders, coming up either onto the knees and then pushing backward, or coming up full plank and pushing backward. Okay. But if you wanted to, at the wall, you could do a crawl, a bear crawl. Now, a bear crawl is opposite arm and leg. So pretend the wall's right here. So I raise opposite arm and leg. So I'm creating an action. Believe me, lifting your legs, lifting your arm like that is going to make you fatigue. But if you wanted to do the bear crawl on the ground, then what you do is you would tilt forward into sort of a downward dog kind of position. And your opposite arm and leg would go forward. So first you would suspend yourself, then you'd step, suspend yourself, and then step. So you're balanced each step you take. Then you go backwards. Hey. And your body is not going to remember when you were a baby you crawled, because that, we could also say that's a baby crawl that we're creating. So this particular movement of the bear crawl is one that the body should have remembered from babyhood and probably has forgotten all about. So at the wall, at the floor, but that's just part of the option. So it could be that you're doing the forearm plank to lifting the hips, or it could be that you're doing the bear crawl. You could do the forearm to pulling the hips backward at the wall as well. And it's nice to mix and match. These are both going to be working the arms and the legs. This is a full body activity in both situations, and it's whichever one seems to be the right one for you right now. That's what I recommend you do. So just, work what seems pleasant and comfortable. And that's going to be a high intensity interval, especially if you're doing the bear crawl. You're going to feel your heart rate is climbing. And it's okay to take sips of water, relax, etc. You don't have to absolutely keep up with me exactly the same. And you don't have to absolutely do 10 repetitions. You can just do the number that seems right. But after that, we are going to be working with the chest press concept. And so if I'm doing the chest press at the wall, which is a good way to do it, I start with a really wide arm position. And I'm standing first to get my position away from the wall, and then I'm coming toward the wall, but I'm pushing my hands toward the middle to get the back of the chest nice and wide. So that would be me with my invisible wall, me doing a chest press up the wall. It's not exactly the same as a push-up, but it's really close. The strap version keeps me standing. I take the strap, I place it low on the back, flat to the shoulder blades. I cinch it up so it'll be nice and comfortably tight, and then I swing out wide, rounding. I can cross one arm over the other, and if I do, I'll do the other side cross. So that's a nice chest pressing. So there's a combination of straightening the arms and crossing one arm over the other, both things that the pectoral muscles do. And I can also do this chest press on the floor. So the floor version, I always put my knees in a bend to protect the back. Instead of having my arms right next to me, I spread them out about a 45-degree angle. So they're not right in line with the shoulders, and they're not right in line with my sides. They're in between. Now from this position, I come with the arms close together. I can touch like this, or I can touch like this. I can even lift my shoulders up off the floor a little bit to create more of an effect. So I'm coming up. I will not cross one arm over the other, but if I want to lift my shoulder blades away from the floor, that's going to get more of a nice action in both pectoral muscle and the underneath the shoulder blades, serratus anterior. So the chest press done from the floor, really nice. It allows us to work with a smaller amount of weight than we would be working with a standard push-up. It allows us to create that finessing action, that curving of the arm, which is fairly useful if you're giving hugs kind of action. And so there we go, several different things we could do with the chest press. And then when you're ready, we're going to be working with the figure 8. So if you have a hand weights work great. Just hold the edge of the weight. If you have a kettlebell, which is the traditional way to do this, you use a kettlebell. And you start off standing upright. You go into a squat. You pass underneath your body. You come back up again, underneath, come back up again. I tell you, I'm going in one direction, okay? And when I'm ready for it, I will take myself and make myself do this in the opposite direction Oh my goodness, does my brain wonder what's up? Remember, have full control of the kettlebell. Do not, or the weight, do not let yourself fling a heavy weight across the room. Here I am using a hand weight, so I hold the edge of the hand weight so that I can more easily pass the other end to my other hand and get a better control of this. And here I am, I'm going to switch my directions. And my legs are like, what? Another chance for us to work pretty hard? Yes. Remember, chest uplifted. You're not looking down. Your chest stays upright even as you go into the squat action.
Julie, why is that so difficult to do in the other direction?
Because your brain prefers one way, and it just is like writing with the left hand if you're right-handed. It's just the brain has a pattern that it wants to do. So that's part of it. We switch directions so we train the brain to be more coordinated.
The other direction is just like killer.
There you go.
It shouldn't be.
It's okay. Whatever we find, this is the start, and we'll get stronger. We will get stronger. So sometimes it's patterning. A lot of what we do is full body patterning. It's not just this one muscle. It's how all of the muscle partners behave, as well as how the brain can coordinate the action. Next up, flat back leg lift. Okay, remember, you could put your back to the wall, flattening the back, and then shifting to the side, lift a leg toward the chest. This is working. This is doing the action. But if you can come to the floor, it's a little different. We pull a knee, hold it. We stretch a leg up. Our back should be pressed so flat. Our belly should pull inward. And we lower the leg. And you got to keep the back flat. You're probably going to lose the belly pulling inward. After a little bit, you bring it back up again. And then you do the other side. Back flat. I mean, I'm pushing. I'm trying to push. If there were a penny beneath me, I'd be trying to push the imprint of that penny onto my mat. But I'm also not just flattening my back, I'm pulling in the belly. And so that is a pretty strong action. At least, you know, we're on our back after the figure eight. So, you know, there we go. So these are enough to get us into a good heightened circulation, good cardiovascular action. With some of our activities, the others are a very strong concentration of control of those muscles. So, you know, it's not lower my leg to the floor, it's flatten my back and pull my belly in. That's the work. The leg coming down is the provocation. So if my leg doesn't come down very far, let's just say, I'm only able to keep my back flat, my belly pulled into about there, then that's where I'm working. That's where the work is right now. And that's okay. It's okay with me for my body to say, this is my boundary, this is my limit. Because holding to that limit means that we're going to get better. All right, so we want to get better. And so therefore, we stay within the boundaries that our body has set for us, because the alignment is essential in telling the body what muscles we want to work. And the next, upright row. Hey, okay. You know, an upright row could be done if you have the right kind of strap. Let's see if I have, oh boy, talk about it, but I don't have a strap. Okay, if you had the right kind of strap. This strap is a little too tough for me, but I'll show you the essence of the idea. So this is a pretty strong strap. I could do the upright row with a strap instead of with a weight. I could stand in the center of the strap, and my arms are turned slightly inward, and I just draw up. Ooh, that's a strong strap. All right, so there we go. I can do this with a strap, a wider strap. Or I can do it with one or two weights, right? So I stand and I draw upward. The ends of the weights touching together will give me a little bit more. I got to make sure my arms are nice and level. I'm trying for that, lifting equally. And there we go. To look in the video to see who is lagging behind. Or I could, if the arms are very out of line with each other, do one side and then do the other side. Remembering that the elbow might be a lot higher than the wrist. That's more inward rotation, more action in the rotator cuff, or there might just be arm brought to level. But there's not a situation where the wrist is higher than the elbow. That is not what we want to do. We want to keep everything as level as possible, or the elbows higher. Yeah. And so we, as I said, we do that upright row, and that's the activation that will help our shoulders stay comfortable. And then we'll start the round again, our third and final round, with either the good morning or the deadlift. Now, by now, your body having done these things several times, it is natural that you would be feeling some fatigue and maybe some resistance from your body saying, I don't want to do it anymore. So be particularly attentive to your alignment. If you choose to do the good morning, then the hips are going back, you're tilting forward with or without weights. You push your heels away from each other, you push your pelvis forward, and there's no bend of the knees. If you're doing the deadlift, it starts out like the good morning. You tilt forward, and then you bend the knees, you lift your chin, you press heels to come back up. So the good morning has three pieces, basically. The tilt forward, the heels pressing outward, the pelvis pushing forward. The deadlift has four pieces: the tilt forward, the bending of the knees, the lifting of the chin, and pressing heels to come up. So great actions, really good for back of the leg. Both the hamstring and the seat muscle are engaged with this action. And to create the multi-activity of the deadlift, we are training our body to be specific, persistent with an alignment. So that is a really good thing to do. And then we're going to decide, do we want to do the plank dolphin? Do we want to do the bear crawl? So I'll remind you, both things could be done at the wall. If I'm in a position here, so I'm a little farther away from the wall, right over it, and then I'm just going to push and tilt my hips backward, and that's going to put my shoulders in a bit of a stretch. That would be the plank dolphin at the wall. The bear crawl at the wall, I'm standing and I'm raising arm and opposite leg. So there's the bear crawl at the wall. On the floor, we've got the forearm position that we're either coming up into a kneeling plank and then pushing backward, or we're coming up into a full plank and pushing backward. Now, when you come out of that, come all the way back down again. It's really good to start over from the very beginning of it. All right, so that you get that piece of coming out. It creates a little bit of elongation in the muscles. For the bear crawl on the floor, you're lifting up hips high. You're stepping. First, you just sort of lift. You see if you can stay balanced, and then you step, lift, see if you can stay balanced, and then you step. And so that will get you going right, and then you step backwards. And the first couple of times you do this, your brain is certain that you've gone crazy, and it will not do it well for you. And you'll try and lift up both right sides or both left sides, and your brain will be like, what the heck? So you'll be tilting back and forth. But it's okay. It's okay. Because by the next time we do this, your brain will have mastered the effect. Your brain is like, yes, I know exactly how to do all of these things. Even if you haven't practiced it one single time between here and the next time we do the class, your brain will be working on that and remembering how to do the bear crawl. And that's great. Okay. Remember, you may be ahead of me, you may be behind me. I'm going to go ahead into the chest press portion. So where I'm taking this with the strap around the back. Now I could do the strap out in the middle of the room. I can also put my hands on the wall and create the backward movement of the chest press and the shoulders rounding out, my hands pressing as if they could come together closer, but on the wall, they're not going to come closer. If I'm using the strap by itself solo, then I come out and around in the action. And so that's a good one. We could also do the chest press with weights on our back like this, arms spread out 45 degrees, coming up. And so the weights come together either with the hands turned like so, but then you could also take the arms and bring them up with the arms turned a little bit different. It does make a difference which position the weights are in, one versus the other. It's just a very slight rotation of the shoulder, and you might try them both different ways and see which one is more desirable right now, or which one is more challenging if that's what you're after. And that's good. And when we're done with the chest press, it's time for us to work through the figure eight. Now, the biggest tip I'll give you about the figure eight is that you don't want to just bend forward. You're going into a squat, not a forward bend, okay? So in position, that chest is remaining as lifted as you can make it. Your feet are really wide apart. I'm using a hand weight right now. I'm coming down and I'm not looking at what I'm doing. I've got to feel it. So I'm not looking at what I'm doing. My chest is remaining lifted as I'm coming down and up. All right, so that's important. With the hand or the kettlebell, it's just a different shape handle that we're doing. And remember, when you've gone one way a few times, try and do it the other way. If you're having a struggle with it, just go back and forth in the same angle a few times, and your brain will go, oh, okay. So it's gonna make your brain think, what the heck? If you reverse, it's gonna have a preference for going one way versus the other. But remember, the action is really in the legs. The arms passing that kettlebell gives you something to do while you go into that many squats. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a good one. Gets that heart rate up, gets us ready for all sorts of things, and that's good. And that's good. So in round 3, if you are doing all 10, you're probably coming to a point where you are definitely feeling the effects of your action. If you are thinking that you're really not very fatigued, you probably want to slow things down because you're going at a pace faster than your muscles can keep up with. And so work with that, because even if you don't have a very heavy weight, you can slow down enough that your body's going to feel the effect. You're going to get some lactic acid burn. And especially in this next one, the flat back leg lift. Now we will proceed over the next 8 weeks with this flat back leg lift, gradually changing only to the effect of our body strengthening. So this first way I'm showing you is like the first level of action, and it's really important. You can have your back flat to the wall and raising a leg up, or you can come onto your back and flatten it. Now, the flattening of the back is a pushing down. It's not just the position my body comes into. There's pressure, and I can maintain that pressure by holding a leg in. And then this leg comes up. It doesn't have to be completely straight. And then I just let it come down, and I am flattening my back and pulling in my belly. 2 muscle effects there. I tied my shoe there. And so then the other side, making sure the back is flat, pulling in my belly, and just seeing when does that try and change. So I don't have any particular goal about how low my legs have to go. I am just noticing at what point do I lose control of this pressing my back into the floor. And that's really important. I'm pressing my back. If I was at the wall, I'd be pressing my back into the wall. And so that's an action created by this rectus abdominis region. The other action of pulling inward as we press the back flat is the deepest layer of the abdomen. And I'd love you to have a 2-for-1, so pull in the belly and flatten the back at the same time. 2 different muscles controlling that action. If you're feeling discomfort in the back, always gentle pull in, a little bit of rocking side to side, and then consider the activity that you did and lessen it. Don't let your back feel strained because, you know, we got to get strong in the core, but we can't, while our core is not sufficiently strong, traumatize our back. Okay. Next up, upright row. Okay. So a couple of weights, or as I showed, a strap, an appropriate level of strap. So the upright row, get that anterior deltoid active. So we're standing, and we can touch the ends of the weights together. We can come slowly up, and then back down again. We can do the one side at a time. Always nice to focus exclusively on one action at a time. It's really very helpful. Very helpful. And so there we go. Still not even. And so we get used to these actions. If you want it to feel a lot more intense, you take it really, 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 really slow. Just try one of those and you're like, oh my goodness, slowly up and slowly down. Things will fatigue. And then when we've done everything, finishing up, we're doing several things. If you want to do a few more things, of course you do. Continue on. Or when you're ready for your warm down, you take the feet wide, you begin the spin, a little spinning action. Since we were already standing, we might as well begin our warm down from a standing position. If you're still on the ground and you want to begin your warm down, well, my goodness, who could blame you? Put my hands to my bent knees and reach across, but you know, since I know if I bring my elbows down under the knees, I get a slightly different stretch. I'm going to do that one too. I like that one. And I'm close to the floor, so I'm going to come all the way down to the floor and do some things that work really nice as a warm down. I bring the knees in, hands come to the front, and I stretch the leg away, and what a nice stretch into my neck and my shoulder. It's a nice little reset there. Now I want to think of my warm down as a chance for my body to collect itself, to add back in oxygen, to begin to counteract the effects of that lactic acid. So I'm recovery breathing. I want to maneuver my body parts back into their appropriate position in case they shifted. I want to do some twists, which are very soothing to the structure of the spine. I've got my knees wide apart. I'm doing a wide knee rock. Shoulders staying down. So any muscles that got tense in my back or any joint structures of the spine that got out of place might have a chance to get back in again. And then of course, there are a number of things that you like to do as you finish out your exercise, things that are soothing to the body, so that the body knows, hey, we finished it, we did what we were supposed to do. Because remember, to the unconscious mind, the only reason we were doing this is because it was life or death. We had to. Why else would we move? Stay in bed. Your follow-through includes what you do in the following hour, and the most important one of those is to consume your protein, 30 grams. Your sleep is very essential, so the 7 to 10 hours that you get every night, or at least trying to, is going to help your body reduce inflammation and grow those muscle structures, those protein structures that you use for muscles and immune cells. And also you want to pattern your workout life to have periods of intensity followed by less intensity. So remember, there's got to be a 24-hour time off between peak intensities, or else you're overtraining and at greater risk for injury. So pattern it out. We're going to have a lovely next 8 weeks working with this routine. If you have some comments or questions, always let me know. So you did great today. Excellent, excellent work.